And now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Holly Ryder-Milkovich, who is Senior Director of Prevention Education here at EverFi. She will be presenting today. A little bit on Holly. Before joining us, Holly directed the Sexual Assault Prevention and Awareness Center at the University of Michigan, and also provided expertise to President Obama's White House Task Force on best practices for campus-based sexual and intimate partner violence prevention and response efforts, and also represented four-year colleges and universities in the federally negotiated rulemaking committee for the 2013 Violence Against Women Act reauthorization. Holly brings to the EverFi team over 2 decades of experience in violence prevention and response, and also in higher education. So with that, Holly, I'd like to kick it off to you so you can dive us deeper into today's topic.
Thank you so much, Michele, and I'm so thrilled to have colleagues on the line with me today, especially as I know here we are wrapping up Sexual Assault Awareness Month and all of the amazing activities that are happening on your campus. The fact that everybody is still in their chairs and still standing is a testament to what I know is the passion and the resiliency of my colleagues across the country. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you could go ahead and forward the slide, please. Oh, actually, stay right where you are, Jessica. Thank you. So I'm so excited also to share with you some of the results of the partnership that EverFi has joined with It's On Us. Let me just tell you a little bit about our partner It's On Us and our work together today. So first launched in 2014, It's On Us works to educate, engage, and empower students and communities across the country to be part of the solution to ending sexual violence. Their campaign has 3 core pillars: consent education, increasing bystander intervention, and creating an environment that supports survivors. And over the past 2 years, I've been amazed to watch It's On Us grow to include over 95 partners and 350,000 pledge signers. Students across the country have hosted 1,400 events on 533 campuses. So like EverFi, It's On Us has that nationwide reach and ability to leverage networks to create change. If you could go ahead and move to the next slide, please, Jessica. So let's move into a little bit more about the work that we're doing with It's On Us. Beginning in fall of 2016, It's On Us launched their Campus Innovation Program. The Campus Innovation Program is unique in that its goal is to amplify the amazing work that's already being done across campuses across the country with students and administrators and help those institutions implement sustainable change. The Campus Innovation Program is built on the ideas that school administrators and student activists are already engaging in and promoting to create those safe and inclusive campuses for survivors and for their allies. It creates a network of campus administrators and provides opportunities to facilitate scalable change on campuses of all shapes, sizes, and demographics to share best practices and resources within that network. We're really proud to partner with EverFi, and EverFi is proud to partner with It's On Us to share our tools and resources for increasing campus sexual violence prevention efforts, reach, and strength. As a part of this partnership, we provided all the Campus Innovation Program schools with an opportunity to complete the Sexual Assault Diagnostic Inventory, along with other EverFi partner schools. This webinar highlights the cumulative results from all the colleges and universities that completed the Sexual Assault Diagnostic Inventory. So along with It's On Us, EverFi, through our Campus Prevention Network, we examined the current state of sexual assault prevention to identify what we see as positive national trends in higher education, and also to spotlight areas that need further and continued attention as we move forward in the next 6 years, 12 years, 20 years hence from that Dear Colleague letter that launched into all of our lives 6 years and 22 days ago. We want to commend each campus that's committed to the self-review that this sexual assault diagnostic inventory process represents and appreciate the contributions of all of that information to help us share the insights that we're going to provide to you today. So you could go ahead and forward the next slide, please, Jessica. Thank you. So let's dive right in to look at this sexual assault diagnostic inventory. EverFi developed this inventory over the past several years as a way to really help campuses make sense of how their prevention efforts stack up to the best recommendations from the field of research literature. What we were hearing from schools and colleges across the country is that sometimes it's really hard to make sense of what is the work that we're supposed to be doing, how to make sense of the huge body of literature that is out there to really hone in where a school is doing well and places that a school can really amplify its efforts to continue increased improvement. If you can go ahead and move to the next slide, please, Jessica. Thank you. So as this slide illustrates, in the initial development process of our sexual assault diagnostic inventory, the Campus Prevention Network did a deep dive into the prevention literature across a spectrum of areas. And this is really important to us because, especially as so many of you out there know painfully well, the body of research data on sexual violence prevention in general and for campuses in specific, while growing, is still in its nascent stage. So we really harness a lot of the insights across a spectrum of different kinds of big public health issues that campuses face. It's not necessarily specific to higher education. They're not necessarily peer-reviewed, though we were careful to consider only research literature that comes from well-established and well-respected journals and publications across the field. And we really focused on elements of effective prevention and those publications that offered the guidelines, suggestions, and recommendations or standards that we knew that campuses were searching for to benchmark against their own work. If you could please move to the next slide. Thank you. As this slide demonstrates, all of that deep dive really boiled down into a 10-year span look, most of them which came from 2010 and present, that identified 26 different theories and frameworks and 315 separate recommendations. We looked at those recommendations and we identified that from those recommendations, those 315, we had about 22 categories and 117 different and specific recommendations. And it is from those 22 categories and those 117 recommendations that we created the sexual assault diagnostic inventory that our schools and colleges participated in. If you could please move to the next slide. So what did we come up with? Oftentimes, when folks think about programming, or think about comprehensive prevention rather, the first thing they think about is programming. And sometimes that's the only thing that they think about. And it makes sense. After all, we're in the business of education. And so providing education to our different populations across campus is a natural first step to look. But what that deep dive into the research literature shared with us is that just delivering programs is not enough to create the lasting cultural change needed to reduce the rates at which individuals on campus commit or experience harm. We need to go to the spine or to the base of an organization and look at how these messages are institutionalized. So starting at the very bottom, we're looking at institutionalization. Moving up, we're looking at what are the processes in place to ensure that efforts are coordinated, that they're informed by evidence, theories, research, and that they're evaluated for efficacy. And those are those critical processes. So we have areas in our diagnostic inventory that are examining those critical processes. And then at the tip, we're looking at that programming that is perhaps not the first place we should look, but absolutely a core part of the work that needs to be done. And to look at that programming in terms of the what are we doing? The how are we getting it done? The who, whether that's targeted to individual populations or whether it's universal. And the when, that it's being provided in a way that is timely and that is appropriate to the developmental stages of the population. And so this is the model for comprehensive prevention that we promote here through the Campus Prevention Network and that we're looking at when we're doing the sexual assault diagnostic inventory. If you can move to the next slide, please. All right, so who took this sexual assault diagnostic inventory? How do we get the information for what we're going to talk about today? We're really proud of the fact that we had 68, as of April 1st, 2017, 68 different participating institutions from whom we draw this information. As you can see, we have a near split between public and private. We also have representatives from small colleges of less than 5,000 students, all the way up to those schools and colleges that are, are large institutions that are serving over 20,000 students. And we also had a robust mix of the kinds of institutions who participated, 20% being institutions that identified as rural, 25% as suburban, and then 23% as those urban institutions. I'm really excited to see this kind of mix of the participating institutions. I'll note that we also have really robust geographic distribution as well, and so we're really confident that the findings from these participating institutions really reflect the national trends that are happening in the field. If we can go ahead and move forward to the next slide, please. Oops, I'm sorry, Jessica, if you could go back one slide. Thank you very much. So just one more additional look here at our methodology before we dive into the findings from the sexual assault diagnostic inventory. As you can see from this slide, the results from the participating institutions were analyzed based on the weighted importance of each item with regards to the alignment that they demonstrate to the best practices that we found from our research. And through this, we categorized institutions as being emerging, developing, proficient, or advanced in each of the three pillars covered by the SABI, as well as in aggregate. And you can see here from the table that we have included on this page that most of our campuses, over 50%, are either proficient or advanced in at least one, if not multiple categories. And so this is a really positive finding for us. And so as we're going forward and looking at each of these areas more specifically, I want you to keep in mind that what we're finding is that most campuses have strengths in at least one, if not many of these areas. And we'll also note that every single campus has places where they can continue to grow. And so as we are sharing this information for those campuses who find that they already have significant strengths, we really want to encourage those campuses to build on those strengths, to be that vanguard institution that's going to help create the new knowledge that will shift this work across the nation. For those campuses who are in the beginnings of their work or find that they are emerging in multiple areas, we hope that you'll take this information and really be able to apply it to moving your institution to the next stage of your work and the next stage of excellence in the field. Okay, if you go ahead and move forward, please. Thank you very much. So let's look more specifically at that core pillar of institutionalization. This domain explores the commitment of senior leadership to an institution's prevention efforts. So when we're thinking about institutionalization, we're focusing on resource allocation and staffing, we're focusing on accountability, and the visible prioritization of prevention across that greater campus community. If you can move forward, please. Thank you. So let's look first at that visible leadership. How often have presidents and vice presidents spoken publicly about this issue on campus? From the sexual assault diagnostic inventory, what we identified is that 75% of college presidents across our entire sample spoke on this issue at least once in the past year. So overwhelmingly, our campus presidents are speaking on this issue. And we think that that's a really positive forward trend from when the Dear Colleague letter was first announced 6 years ago. We'll note here that 25% of college presidents have spoken on the issue of sexual violence prevention 4 or more times publicly in the past year. So really making sexual violence prevention a part of the ongoing conversation and the ongoing leadership commitment that a college president is speaking to on a regular basis. Among advanced institutions, the percentage of college presidents who speak to this issue 4 or more times per academic year rises to 50%. So we see here a connection between schools and colleges who have presidents who are publicly committed to this issue, also demonstrating other kinds of commitment and support. I've shared here Williams College, a quote that was a part of a video that they recently shared with their entire alumni and current student body, faculty and staff, about their commitment to sexual violence prevention. And what President Falk says is the work of preventing and responding to sexual assault is one of the highest priorities we have here. And then he goes on to note, but it is hard work because it is about changing culture. I'm going to point out that President Falk is doing a number of really important things here. He's both talking about the commitment to sexual violence prevention, connecting it to the mission of the institution, and also acknowledging that there's a lot of work that has yet to be done. What we've noted is that college presidents who most successfully speak about sexual assault prevention in the public to their communities share these traits. They talk about the current campus climate with transparency and candor. They balance compassion for those who have experienced a sexual assault on campus, along with the importance of strong due process protections for all students. They provide specific, accurate information about an institution's efforts to prevent sexual assault, as well as shared information about how to support impacted students. If you are looking to increase your campus's president's visibility and public commitment to this issue, we think that this is an excellent place to consider developing relationships with your public affairs team and your media relations team, to cultivate a connection with your president's speechwriter, for example, and help those professionals develop knowledge and skills and familiarity with your institution's efforts so that your senior leadership members are comfortable speaking about this issue, so they can fluently discuss your institution's successes as well as its challenges, and they know what your specific plan is to enact transformation on your campus. After all, your plan is their plan. It's the institution's plan. If you can move forward, please. Thank you. So let's look a little bit more about garnering that presidential focus. For campuses that are looking to increase their presidential focus in this area, we encourage you to consider the areas that are identified on this slide as significant to the issue of sexual assault and that are also a primary concern to college and university presidents. Connecting for that for your president the way in which sexual assault prevention really impacts all of these core areas on reputation, brand and recruitment, around safety, around risk management and reducing liability, around engaging donors and getting them excited about sexual violence prevention and promoting healthy relationships with students across their campus, about not just meeting but exceeding the regulations that are imposed upon schools and colleges to achieve compliance, and about not just attracting excellent students to the campus, but ensuring that they succeed and thrive on campus and retaining them from their first year all the way through graduation. That garnering of the presidential focus also not only has its visibility in presidents speaking about this issue publicly, but also in how a president charges the institution to do this work of sexual violence prevention. In our sample, over a third of college presidents have specifically charged a campus working group or committee that is focused on sexual assault prevention efforts. And over half of college presidents are involved in some way in that prevention committee or task force. Now with that, some may ask, okay, so why do you care so much about presidents, vice presidents, chancellors, or provosts talking publicly about this issue? You can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Ideally, what we're hoping is that college and university presidents will, in the words of my former University of Michigan president, Mark Schlitzel, quote, feel personally responsible for the safety and well-being of all students. And we hope that those college presidents will translate that personal commitment and that institutional commitment into stable, ongoing funding and personnel support for their sexual assault prevention efforts. And so as you can see on this chart, boy, when it comes to prevention staffing, and as we'll talk about in just a minute, prevention budgets, size really does matter. So from the sexual assault diagnostic inventory, one of the things we learn is that medium-sized schools struggle as it relates to that prevention staffing. They have an average of 1 FTE for nearly 20,000 students. Large and small schools report somewhat better and similar staffing sizes for the 1 FTE for between 9,000 and 10,000 students. Our smaller schools fare the best when it comes to prevention staffing, with 1 FTE for a little over 4,000 students. I'll note that this is a place that we really hope to see positive growth in the future, especially as we move forward to discuss the kinds of programming that is going to be required to really make a difference, to move that needle on sexual assault prevention at schools and colleges more generally. You need to have the staffing on board to get the work done. And as we can see, this is an area where even our best schools have only 1 FTE for every 4,000 students, which is still an enormous amount of work on the shoulders of very few. If we can move forward, please. Okay, let's look then at that prevention budget. You'll see here that our largest institutions of over 15,000 undergraduate students enrolled, and I need to make a note that we're really specifically looking at our undergraduate students here. We are spending about $1.55 per student. Now, I don't know when was the last time that you went and got a cup of coffee, but that is less than a cup of coffee costs for students. And because of, and partially because of that, what we've identified that currently no institution that enrolled over 15,000 students has been able to achieve advanced status in the area of institutionalization. And this is primarily because of that critical gap in the resources as it relates to FTE and the allocation of prevention budget dollars to those large institutions. This is a critical gap for institutions that otherwise are really able to demonstrate strong programming and strong critical processes. That strong programming efforts and those strong critical processes are not going to be able to move forward, to expand without a significant investment as well. Again, our smaller schools are faring the best as it relates to that prevention budget, so a little over $5 per student for our schools that have less than 5,000 students enrolled. And then when we look across all of our institutions at aggregate, we're seeing a little over little less than $4 per student spent on prevention. So, even for our best schools, we're spending less than the cost of one T-shirt on sexual assault prevention efforts across campus. And if there's something that I hope that you'll take away from this webinar and share across your campus, it's that even those campuses who are doing the best work in this area are still not providing the kinds of resources that we know are important for effective prevention. And I'm going to say one last word here as it relates to institutionalization. As we analyze the aggregate results of schools' institutionalization scores with their aggregate programming scores, one of the things that we found is that there's about a 12% positive difference in programming scores for those schools with strengths and institutionalization. And so for us, this finding suggests a relationship between the strengths in programming and strengths in institutionalization. And we think that it really supports a focus on increasing institutional support as a part of the campus's overall strategy to improve their comprehensive prevention efforts. It really does matter where we place our dollars. Okay, if we could move forward, please. Thank you. And with that, I want to turn and share a little bit of information about one of the schools who achieved advanced status in this institutionalization area. And I really had the pleasure of learning more about the work happening at the University of Puget Sound from their Associate Dean Marta Cady, who I hope is on the line with us today. So when I talked with Dean Cady, I was really struck by the thoughtfulness of the way in which Puget Sound has gone about institutionalizing their effort around sexual violence prevention. So in 2013, the University of Puget Sound created their Sexual Assault Working Group. And that Sexual Assault Working Group got together and created a series of recommendations. Those series of recommendations led to the creation of their Sexual and Gender Violence Committee. This is the committee that is currently chaired by Associate Dean Cady, and that is really responsible for making sure that the University of Puget Sound's efforts are coordinated across the campus and are informing each other. And one of the ways that they do that is through their two subcommittees. So they have one subcommittee that's focused on prevention and education, and they have another subcommittee that's really focused on the policy and procedures, allowing for each subcommittee to really hone in on the expertise of that group to do the best work possible in those two areas, and that they come together underneath this larger Sexual and Gender Violence Committee working group to ensure that coordination that is the charge of this committee. One of the things that Associate Dean Cady, one of the ways that she described the work of this committee is that they are a lean machine. And Associate Dean Cady noted that while the University of Puget Sound has a total equivalency, FTE equivalency of 2 staff members who specifically address sexual violence prevention and response on campus for their 2,600 students approximately, that the University of Puget Sound has, through this Sexual and Gender Violence Committee, at least 50 staff members and or faculty who see sexual assault prevention and response as core to their professional responsibilities. And so one of the reasons that we really wanted to share some of the work happening at the University of Puget Sound is that we think that it can serve as a model for other institutions who have a smaller number of FTEs who are working on this area as a way to really share this work in a meaningful way across campus and really get the buy-in and the support from the entire institution. So thank you to the University of Puget Sound for allowing us to share part of your story today. I would note that there's lots of other things that if we had more time, we would share about the University of Puget Sound's efforts. You can move forward, please. Great. And now let's go ahead and turn our focus to critical processes. What do we mean by critical processes? These are those processes that are in place to translate an institution's resources and commitment into an effective prevention strategy. Critical processes include data collection and evaluation, goal setting, strategic planning, capacity building, and collaboration. We're really talking about the glue that translates that institutionalization commitment into effective programming. All right, if we could move forward, please. Thank you. So what you see here is information from the Sexual Assault Diagnostic Inventory that really shares how schools and colleges across the country are providing programming to their students. And as you can see, we have the vast majority of our undergraduate students are receiving opportunities to participate in programming between once to twice a week to once or twice a semester. That's a positive trend that we see, that we have a little over 70% of our students having more than one opportunity per semester to be able to engage in that programming. That shifts dramatically when we turn to campus faculty and campus staff. So the inverse is true, that overwhelmingly campus faculty and staff have once or twice a semester or fewer to engage in sexual violence prevention programming. And so this is something that, as you're looking at a comprehensive prevention effort and considering the ways in which faculty and staff help shape a campus climate, providing ongoing professional development and other programming opportunities for those faculty and staff to really engage in this work are going to help them really be a part of the process of culture change on your campus, and we believe will create a safer campus for all. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this was, the previous information was really looking at the aggregate information. Now let's take a look at those campuses who were advanced in critical processes. What we see here is that those campuses are overwhelmingly providing programming opportunities to their undergraduate students once or twice a week, and that they're doing a lot more programming for campus faculty and campus staff, providing opportunities for them more often at once or twice a semester for both campus faculty and for campus staff. And this really helps to create, again, that cross-institution effort to make sexual violence prevention a part of the ongoing and continuing conversations in the lifeblood of the institution. Can we move forward to the next slide, please? Thank you. We also asked, as a part of the Sexual Assault Diagnostic Inventory, questions about how campuses are undergirding their work using theory and whether or not they're using a logic model. And what we discovered, happily, is that over 80% of the campuses who participated in the study are basing their programming in at least one theoretical model. The most common theoretical model being the socio-ecological model that is demonstrated by the, to me, much beloved graphic that you see below. We also found that among those schools who were categorized as advanced as it relates to critical processes, that 73% of those students of those campuses are using logic models to guide and inform and evaluate their work. Here at the Campus Prevention Network, we really see logic models as valuable tools for campuses to use to develop as well as evaluate those campus prevention efforts. They have additional value in being able to foster a shared understanding of an institution's comprehensive prevention plan among a variety of stakeholders. Logic models help campuses clearly and succinctly describe various programs and activities and how those work together, and they're a super useful tool in creating accountability to help campuses achieve those goals. We'll note that campuses that achieve that advanced status 73% of the time, we noted already, are using logic models, and that's over 2 times more often than campuses who have not earned that designation. So for campuses that are really looking to strengthen their efforts around critical processes, a logic model is a great place to start. It really represents an opportunity for schools and colleges that have not yet used this tool to engage also the evaluation expertise of your faculty and potentially also of institutional research staff members to help you develop a logic model that's going to make sense for your institution. If we could go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Thank you. And logic models are ultimately about helping an institution chart a path towards progress on articulated, agreed upon, and SMART goals. And we ask about SMART goals as a part of our sexual assault diagnostic inventory. 91% of our institutions that achieved advanced status in this area reported having developed those specific, measurable prevention goals, while only 32% of our campuses across our entire population noted that they had identified goals. So clearly, developing those SMART goals is an important critical process. And that's because that goal identification proves to be a really good predictor of whether institutions have also engaged in strategic planning. So of those campuses that identified goals, 77 reported that they revisit those goals annually, and 67% report having developed a strategic plan related to their comprehensive sexual assault prevention efforts. So what you see on the slide here is one strategy for creating that logic model. And you ask your campuses start by asking themselves these 4 questions. And I'll tell you, these are not necessarily easy questions to answer, but the time and effort it takes to answer these questions and to create this logic model is going to yield results in spades for your institution. And what are those questions? We're asking, what problems are we trying to solve? Why does it matter that we solve these problems? What are the goals that are related to the work that we're doing? What outcomes need to happen to meet those goals? And how are our activities going to produce those outcomes for those goals? What resources do we have and what do we need? So we are going to go backwards from goal to input in order to create that logic model. This is, again, difficult work and time-consuming work, but one which, if you engage with it with your campus community, you're more likely to have agreed upon measures that you understand how you're intending to get there and how you're going to measure your progress. Can we move to the next slide, please? And that leads us to our next campus. We're so delighted to be able to also spotlight Juniata College. And so I had an opportunity to speak with the program director at Juniata, Jody Althouse, to learn a little bit about Juniata's effort in progress in creating their sexual violence prevention plan. And Juniata College's story is really about investing in long-term prevention, in ceding authority for making decisions about prevention with content experts, engaging in a comprehensive process to embrace the ideas and the perspectives of an entire campus community, and providing students with a strong backbone support so that they can drive the change process in a meaningful and informed way. So as I talked with Jody about the work that Juniata is doing, she shared with me this quote that I've placed here on the slide, which she says, "I came with a vision, but not a plan." And so when Jody got to Juniata College and started to create their sexual violence prevention plan, their first step was to do a wide variety of focus groups to really generate a plethora of different ideas about how Juniata College should approach sexual violence prevention that was specific to their campus community. From that initial idea generation from multiple focus groups, Juniata went into the next stage, which is starting to make decisions about how they're going to develop that campus prevention effort. And what they discovered is that even though they had done all of those focus groups and gathered all of that information, that they still had questions or would come to forks in the road about what is the right choice for Juniata College. And when they did that, they did a really cool and innovative sort of crowdsourcing technique of using their campus-based web to put questions or ideas up for votes for the campus and to ask for possible solutions to problems that they had encountered as they're creating their strategic plan, thus continuing to engage the campus in their strategic plan development process. And now Jody tells us that they're at the stage where they're working on finalizing that prevention plan with the assurance that they have that student, staff, and faculty and administrative buy-in. So when we talk about real leadership, one of the things that I was struck as I was talking to Jody was that she noted that Juniata College was lucky enough to receive a grant from the OVW Campus Grant Program. But that, as she was coming on board, one of the things that Juniata College made the decision to do was to make a commitment to make her position that was currently grant funded a permanent position with institutional funding once the grant funding was completed, so that the work that the long-term prevention planning work that they were engaging in would be able to continue regardless of whether grant funding was able to be developed. I really enjoyed hearing about the ways in which Jody has placed the students at the center of their work. And one of the things she shared with us is, and this is a quote, she says, "Our administration is not afraid to learn from our students." And I think that that's a really beautiful model. Jody shared all of the ways in which she is able to provide specific support to those students who are doing work right alongside faculty and staff in developing policies and developing programs to really bring their voices to the table in a meaningful and significant way. So thank you, Juniata College, for sharing just a slice of the positive prevention work that's happening on your campus with us. And if we can go ahead and shift to the next slide, please. Okay, and so in our remaining time together, we have an opportunity to talk again about programming. So returning to where we started. When we're looking at programming, we're looking at, again, the focussy and the frequency of, and I'm going to be specific here, primary prevention programs. We're looking at what community groups those programs have been adopted for, and to what extent those programs are theory-driven and evidence-informed. If you can move to the next slide, please. Great. One of the things that we were pleased to see is that across the campuses who participated in the study, we identified that 60% of those are using partnerships with community-based organizations to deliver that programming, and that 87% are also using campus prevention professionals to deliver that in-person training. And the reason why we think that this is such an important and promising sign is that we see in that evidence of that campus community collaboration that's going to create a strong network and safety of safety for students, staff, and faculty on campus that bridges across the institution into the community that the institution is situated in. It also provides an opportunity for community partners to learn more and to understand better the work that's happening on campus as well, to help bridge that town-gown divide that often can be a barrier to effective efforts. We always like to see that campus prevention professionals are supporting, informing, and in some cases leading the work of in-person violence prevention programming, because this is an area that does have a body of expertise. And we're excited that there is a significant number of campuses that are using peer educators as a part of their work, that 67% a little over 67% of campuses are using peer educators for some of their sexual violence prevention efforts. So let's do a little bit of deeper dive on the peer educator story. If you could switch to the next slide, please. Great. So it's wonderful, and we are excited to see that so many campuses are delivering training using peer educators. But what we are going to know here is that it's really important that peer educators receive strong training in order to be able to successfully fulfill the responsibilities that campuses give them. Here at the Campus Prevention Network, we like to see peer education training covering these areas to provide a picture into the larger plan of sexual violence prevention so that those peers understand how they fit into this picture. To help those peer educators learn resiliency and self-care to avoid that burnout and compassion fatigue. To become very skilled at having those challenging conversations with other students that we know leads to knowledge, attitude, and behavior change. To be experts on what kinds of resources are available on campus, not only for their other students, but also for themselves. To know what their responsibilities are for reporting information if they have any, and to know how the institution talks about these issues, what the foundational messaging is, so that those peers are a part of a comprehensive, sinuous, seamless approach to violence prevention on their campus. If you could move to the next slide, please. Okay, so what we see here is that 80% of the students who are involved in peer education are receiving professional training from their campuses, which is great news. And we could use some more work in the area of training those peer educators. So we want to look at an additional investment of time in both that initial and that ongoing training for those peer educators. As you can see here, the majority of our peer educators are receiving 5 hours or less of training, and that is simply not going to be enough in order to really get the job done, so that they're prepared to do all of the things that we ask those peer educators to do in an informed and responsible way. If you could move forward to the next slide, please. Thank you. And we also know that as a nation, we need to do a better job at developing and delivering specific programming for our students of color on campus. So what you see here on this slide is that across the country, we see that most of our campuses are delivering to their first year students, those resident advisors, those athletes, those student leaders, and those Greek life participants. And all of that is a great sign, because we know, especially with those athletes, those student leaders, and those Greek life folks, that they are opinion leaders on campus, and they can really help shift the conversation moving forward. But when we look to the right-hand side of the slide, what we see is that those students who are most likely to experience violence on campus are also not getting the kinds of targeted, intentional prevention programming that would be appropriate based on their increased likelihood of risk of victimization. So even among our institutions that are designated as advanced in their programming, only 20% are delivering targeted programming to students who belong to underrepresented racial and ethnic minority groups. In the general sample, as you see on this slide, the results are even worse. Fewer than 10% of campuses report delivering that targeted programming to underrepresented students on campus. LGBTQ students, they're somewhat better. Over 60% of advanced institutions reach these at-risk students, while across the whole sample, around 25% of campuses have developed and delivered targeted programs for students who identify as LGBTQ. We know also that students with disabilities are at increased risk for experiencing sexual victimization, and that students who have previously experienced a sexual victimization are more at greater risk for re-experiencing that victimization. Those are areas where we would like to see greater and increased focus in order to really shift this needle. If I could move forward, please. All right, and so with that, what is the cumulative upshot of this information for schools and colleges nationally? We want to encourage senior administrators to continue speaking publicly about the importance of this issue on their campus in order to visibly demonstrate that commitment to the issue and its importance to the institution as a whole. We recognize that campuses see that the importance of delivering rigorous, theory-driven programming that is appropriate not only to a broad undergraduate student body, but also to particularly vulnerable subpopulations. And we're going to note that that effort is not going to be achieved without greater investment in prevention. Many institutions, and I'm going to note particularly here mid-sized and large schools, do not have the level of prevention personnel or programming dollars that are necessary to execute the strategic planning, the program development, and the program evaluation that is needed to move the needle on this mission-critical issue. So what we find is that institutions are much more likely now to be on the same page as to what is needed and now require the investment in order to get it done. So with all of that, we hope that you might be interested also in doing the sexual assault diagnostic inventory for your school. And so I'm going to spend the remaining couple of minutes to share with you how you can do that. If you could move the slide forward, please. Thank you. So whether you're a community college, a small private institution, or a large public, the Campus Prevention Network is committed to engaging, supporting, and empowering you to do the best work possible and making a positive impact on issues like sexual assault, alcohol and other drug use, wellness, mental health, diversity and inclusion, and in your compliance efforts. We're excited to be able to share these resources across these domains of wellness areas because we know that these issues are related to each other and that they have to be addressed together in order to be effective. You can move forward, please. Through the Campus Prevention Network, we want to enable all institutions to benefit from the collective knowledge and perspectives of their peers and the breadth of expertise offered by our team of prevention and compliance professionals. The CPN website, which you see here, includes a variety of open access resources across the core prevention topics outlined in the previous slide. This website is going to be continuously updated with new materials to support schools in this important work. So, for example, Michaela is going to tell you a little bit about how we're going to send you recordings and slides for this webinar, which are also going to be added to the CPN site. You can also download the report we featured in this webinar on the site to share with others in your campus. The CPN newsletter will also include upcoming events, publications, and blog posts. So sign up for the site. Go to the next slide, please. We know that most schools are deeply committed to creating a safe, healthy living and learning environment for their community. We encourage all schools to demonstrate their dedication to prevention by becoming a participating member of the Campus Prevention Network. Schools can activate the membership by taking the Campus Prevention Network Pledge, which serves as an outwardly visible statement of commitment to doing the best work possible around prevention. And this pledge goes beyond striving for best practice to also include assessing your efforts and measuring progress in the key pillars of prevention shown here and that we've spent time together today discussing. If you could move forward, please. As a part of the initial launch of the Campus Prevention Network during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, pledge-taking members will have access to the Sexual Assault Diagnostic Inventory. The SADI, as we've talked about, is a comprehensive research-based assessment of the prevention programs and practices. So each participating institution is given a designation of emerging, developing, proficient, and advanced in each segment of the diagnostic. And so once your school completes the diagnostic, you will receive a report that will allow you to benchmark against the highest scoring advanced institutions and receive recommendations for next steps going forward. I'm going to note here that simply participating in the SADI has been cited by some campuses as a valuable educational and training exercise to bring together those prevention educators and campus partners. And the data from your SADI will ultimately, we hope, help you by providing insights to inform and improve your prevention efforts. There has been so much emphasis recently on the shortcomings of campus prevention response. It is our mission that the Campus Prevention Network shifts the narrative by highlighting campuses that are doing exemplary work. If you could move forward to the next slide, please. All right, so go to campuspreventionnetwork.com and learn more about taking that membership pledge and participating in the Sexual Assault Diagnostic Inventory. Each year, we at the Campus Prevention Network are going to be publishing Campus Prevention Network schools and recognize and highlight the dedication of participating members. We also encourage you to check out the great resources there and to learn about some of the additional upcoming events. Next slide, please. And one of those events is the annual summit happening June 12th and 13th in Boston, Massachusetts. I hope that I'll see all of you there. It's going to be a really exciting time. Go on the website, check out our amazing speakers, type summit into the question box, and you'll receive a very good special offer on the registration for that event. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Michaela. If you could forward to the last slide, please.
All right, Holly, thank you so much for this outstanding presentation. We've now basically covered the whole hour, so I'm just going to wrap this up really quickly for those of you who are still with us. So, you know, this webinar today gave us a chance to take a very interesting and deep look at data, and you know, particularly what the lay of the land is out there in terms of sexual assault prevention. And I'm sure a lot of you have appreciated this deep insights that Holly was able to provide us, and also to explain how the Campus Prevention Network, it was this sort of like monumental effort that EverFi has embarked on as a company, that it seeks to provide all schools that are deeply committed, like we are, to sexual assault prevention with a whole host of resources that are just intended to further the efforts and further the commitment to solving this incredibly difficult problem that we're faced with. And within that, though, as many of you know, we are also a training company. And so we do believe that the cornerstone to all prevention efforts is, and as we've seen also in a lot of the data that Holly so outstandingly compiled together for us today, training is always the starting point. So I just want to say at this point, for those of you who are still on and are not familiar with the EverFi training platform for Title IX, Campus Save Act, and sexual assault prevention, if you'd like to receive a demo of our courses, this is the time to just type demo on the right-hand side of the screen where the question box is, and we'll make sure that we'll reach out to you, and we'll also give you a tour of the platform if you're interested. That will give you an idea of what, you know, our training piece is about. So again, if you're interested, just type in demo and we'll make sure we get back to you. With that, I think we're up with our time today. So I saw that a lot of you have asked questions. We have them. Holly is going to get back to you on an individual basis at this point. There is really no space for question time, but we will make sure we get back to you. And thanks so much for not only having attended, but having participated so actively. And so I want to thank Holly one more time for this outstanding presentation today. We're very excited to have launched the Campus Prevention Network and have been able to explain to you what it is about. I'm just going to say, again, like I did at the beginning of the webinar, everybody on the call is going to receive a copy of the recording and a full copy of the slide deck for this event. So no need to worry about that. It will be provided to you. And lastly, now that you're going to switch off and the webinar is going to be over, there's going to be a short quality poll survey that it's going to, short quality survey that it's going to initiate within the GoToWebinar platform. And it's our way to collect your feedback on today's event. So takes about 2-3 minutes to complete. We do review very closely all of your answers and all of your inputs, and we do take them in great account for designing future webinars. So if you'd be kind enough as to complete that, that would offer us extremely valuable insights on what you have taken from today's event. With that, I'd like to thank all of you for having been with us today and for your interest in the webinar topic. And we look forward to having you again live in the future. The webinar is now over.